Hello, amazing entrepreneur. It's Tash Corbin here, and welcome to another episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 377, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/377. In today's episode, I'm going to be answering a question from one of our listeners, the fabulous Adrienne. And that question is in relation to knowing that your niche are actually your ideal clients. And so the core question that we really need to answer here is your niche viable, or are they just needy and therefore they are wanting free stuff from you, but it's not actually viable as a business model? So that is the question we're going to be answering, and make sure that you grab the link for the show notes today because I've got some great free resources for you. Let's dive on in. I'm Tash Corbin, and this is the Heart Centered Business Podcast. So, as I said, this question was submitted by the fabulous Adrienne Vogarty, and Adrienne is from Catering Your Life. So that's one of her businesses that is focused on helping people to save money on their grocery bills. We'll make sure that we link to Adrienne's stuff on socials and website over on the show notes of today's episode at tashcorbin.com/377. And we'll also pop a link there for you to submit your questions for the podcast, because I love doing podcasts that are responsive to your questions. So if you go to tashcorbin.com/377, we'll have the link there. And if you submit your question that way and you give me all the links, we can give you some backlinks and a shout out on socials and all sorts of stuff when we actually go and promote the episode. So a big thank you to Adrienne for this question. Now, I'm going to read out how Adrienne worded the question because I've kind of changed it a little, but that's because I want to go a little deeper. So Adrienne said, how do you know if the niche you chose, because you know you can help them, is actually your ideal client? And so what this implies is there's a difference between your niche and your ideal clients. But really, in reality, if your niche is who you market to when you promote your business, it really should be your ideal clients, right? So I often use those terms interchangeably because I want us to normalize that your niche is the who, not the what. A lot of people get confused and they think their niche is kinesiology, which is their modality, or their niche is relationships, which is their topic of expertise, but that's not actually a niche. And so the niche is actually who you are focused on when you are marketing your business. So it's not everyone who could benefit from your services. It's not everyone who needs you or needs what you have to offer. It's who you focus on proactively when you market your business. And because that's the definition of niche that we're working from, then what we need to understand is the niche that you've selected then financially viable as a business? Or is it just a needy group of people that could benefit from working with you but will never pay for it? Or are they just like people who are interested in free resources and, you know, it's something that feels like, oh, that's lovely to know about, but they're not actually driven to invest in the change that you helped to facilitate? So we want to make sure that we're really clear on that, because that then means we're going to have a deeper answer to that question. So hopefully that's okay, Adrienne. So I would say if the niche you chose is not your ideal client, then it's not the right niche, yeah? But how do you know if the niche you're focused on is actually viable? Well, one of the things that I like to say is make offers, not assumptions. So in my experience, every single niche has a profit model that will work for that niche. So, but not every profit model works for all business owners. So yes, some niches are more profitable. Some niches are more likely to convert or less likely to convert, but there is a profit model for every niche. It's just that if the model of business that you are focused on is, say, selling high ticket VIP packages, and the niche that you are focused on marketing to are people who don't particularly see what you do as valuable, don't particularly get excited about investing and working with you, feel like that they could just sort this out themselves, then you're going to struggle to get to that viability and those sales that let you know this is a viable niche for you, right? So some niches would be better suited to the influencer model. So you're not paid by your audience, you're paid by advertisers who want you to endorse their products to your audience. Or some businesses are better suited to monetizing through actual advertising. So you have a fabulous business, it's SEO'd, people are searching for this stuff all the time. Recipe model is one of them, right? So you know how to get your recipes on your website to the top of Google when people are searching for them. You've created this amazing website, it's got really high traffic. Those people are just looking for free recipes. They're not necessarily driven to buy a recipe book, but advertisers would love to get their kitchenware in front of people wanting to cook that recipe. Or advertisers would love to be able to advertise their cookbooks to that type of audience, or their products and services to that type of audience. And so you can sell ad space on your website. All you need to do is keep the recipes coming for free, and the monetization comes from elsewhere. So that's a viable business model. But not a lot of people who want to create a business where they're providing a service or teaching, and their audience or mentoring or doing that sort of thing, want an advertising model as part of their foundation of their business. Like, that's actually not a fast model to work with, and they need their cash flow to be like boosted, and they need to get profitable really quickly. Another model is a low ticket model. So you only sell $9 products or $10 products or whatever it might be. Well, in order to make the volume of sales that you need in order to be viable, you would need to build an audience of tens of thousands of new people every single year. And that's like, building an audience is very expensive these days. If you haven't got something that kind of takes off on its own and has a strong organic growth, then you're just sitting around like waiting and creating a bunch of content, trying to grow that audience so that you've got the numbers to tick the sales over to right? And so that model for a lot of people is not actually a great model, or it's not the right first model of profitability in their business. So the model of profitability that they're most focused on might be selling a VIP package for $2,000. And if I sell one of those a week, every week, that's all I need. And in order to sell one of those a week, I just need to have 3 sales conversations. And in order to get 3 sales conversations, I just need like 20 new people on my mailing list each week. I can do that, right? So for a lot of people, the pathway to a viable niche, i.e. something that's actually creating great baseline income, is actually the high ticket model. But because the high ticket model is high connection, high conversion, it actually requires a far smaller audience than a low ticket model or an advertising model. To even get a second look with influencer style marketing, most niches will require that you have at least 10,000 followers, or at least 25,000 followers is the number I've seen quoted in a lot of different spaces now. And so think about like how long it's taken you to get the 150 followers that you have on Instagram right now. How long is it going to take you to get to 25,000 using the strategies that you're using? And so you could keep doing that and keep plugging away at it. By the time you get to 25,000 followers, now the baseline requirement is 50,000, which has happened to a lot of people. But then also, like, what do you want to just make some money in the meantime? And the just making money in the meantime does not need to require that you have such a huge audience growth. So for a lot of people, a profitable niche for a VIP one-to-one offer or VIP one-to-one services, or a more high touch model, doesn't necessarily mean that that's your long-term plan for your business. doesn't necessarily mean that you're now limiting yourself to only ever working with one new person per week, right? That's often a reason that people give me as to why they want to sell like a $100 course or a $50 course or something else. Is like, but I want to help thousands of people. And I'm like, yeah. In order to help thousands of people, you need to reach hundreds of thousands of people. And reaching hundreds of thousands of people either takes a very long time in growing things organically, or something going viral, which is the exception, not the rule, or it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars of money. Do you have any of those three things? No, I don't have any of those three things. Okay. Well, we can continue to create this belief that in order for you to be able to help thousands of people, you need to sell something low ticket. Or we can see that the fast track to being able to do that is money. And the fast track to getting the money is working with people VIP one-to-one in the first instance. Now, I've had people that I've worked with to help them to create their online business. And what we did was we just need to get 10 VIP clients at $2,500 each. That's $25,000 of seed money that will last you for the 6 months that you need, and with the team that you need to be able to create the organic content, the paid ads, and the audience growth to be able to then launch a $100 course and know that you're going to make 100 sales. And that's another 10 grand. And that 10 grand will be siphoned off. $5,000 is for you and $5,000 is for the next launch, in which we're going to aim to sell to 200 people and make 20 grand, right? And so, but where the money comes from for that scalable part of their growth, for that low ticket part of their business model, is actually high ticket, low audience numbers needed, and high connection, high conversion. So just wanted to lay all of that out before I then say the number one assumption I do not want you to make about your audience, though, is that if they don't have a high income, they cannot invest in high ticket. And I see this happen all the time, where people change their niche or adjust their niche to be like, people will often say to me, I want to work with successful corporate women. I'm like, why successful corporate? Well, they've got the disposable income. Now, I can tell you, just because someone has high income or high disposable income does not mean that they throw that money away at things they don't understand or value. The fact that someone has disposable income may mean you have less price sensitivity for your offer, but that does not mean they will automatically just throw $2,500 at this problem, even if they don't quite understand it. Does not mean that you're going to overcome any of the same challenges you'll have from a value proposition perspective and a messaging perspective and a market viability perspective for focusing on people who aren't in the high disposable income category. In my experience, people who have a very high disposable income often have a high proportion of their income siphoned off into investments or other spaces. Their money is working for them, and it's very well managed and allocated. And so there is no extra likelihood that they will be willing to take a chance on something that they don't understand. So you're going to come up against some of the same problems. Additionally, just because someone has money then doesn't mean that they're necessarily driven by making more money in the same way that someone who has less money would be driven by making more money or connecting something into building an income. And so there are a lot of assumptions out there that if you sell something that helps people to make money, it's easier. Not true. There's more competition. There's more need for evidence of that outcome. There's also less likelihood that the people who have that level of disposable income are looking for that kind of solution. And then you also have to present your value proposition in a way that people actually believe that working with you will get them that income. So it's just as hard, if not harder. And then also there's that belief that the more money people have, the easier it is to sell to them. Also not actually true. And so my number one rule of thumb is that, number one, I do not make assumptions about people's capacity or desire to buy what I have to offer. I never make assumptions about that. Number 2, I do not get myself involved in people's personal finances other than I consistently say on my sales pages and in my launches, if purchasing this will put you in financial harm or risk of financial instability, I do not recommend that you purchase it. So I'm actively saying to people, don't buy this if it's going to put you in financial jeopardy. So that's often another reason why people say that they want to focus on people with money, is because they don't want people buying their stuff if it's going to create financial instability for them. Well, you can just tell people that. You don't have to get yourself involved in their finances or assume that everyone who's working on a limited budget will put themselves in financial jeopardy without thinking it through. Because in my experience, people who may have a little less disposable income, or have less access to spending money, or have less money saved away, they are they're very good at making decisions about where they want to spend their money, and they're allowed to prioritize it in a way that makes sense for them. I'm not going to get myself all up in their business on that. So I want to make sure that we're clear that just because someone has more disposable income does not mean it's easier to sell to them. Just because you're selling something and linking it to them making an income does not necessarily mean that it then is an easier ask or it's easier to sell to those people. And also, just because you're focusing on saving people money doesn't mean they're willing to invest the money up front, right? So with Adrienne's business in particular, let's say on average, the people who work with you save $50 a month on their grocery bill. Well, you could say, well, over the course of 12 months, they're going to save $600 a year on their grocery bill. So paying me $300, they're going to get return on that within 6 months. And then it's just going to keep returning. Well, number one, people will assume that they're going to be making more income in the future than they're making right now. We all have a natural belief that future us will be better than current us, and that future us will earn more than current us. That's why lots of people get sucked into 5 years interest-free deals. But anyway, that's another conversation. But also, when it comes to that saving, the saving the money on their shopping bill is a reasonable expectation, but it's not guaranteed. And so for a potential 600, would you spend 300? But then also you spend the 300, you also have to do the work. You also have to eat differently, or you have to manage your budget differently, or you have to meal plan differently. You're probably not just giving up the money to get the result. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you effort. It's going to cost you changes to your lifestyle. It's going to cost you being more organized in advance. For some people, it's not the financial price that they're not willing to pay. It's the other price that they're not willing to pay. And so, yes, every single niche has a viable pathway to profitability, but not all niches are going to be aligned with you doing that in a way that you want to be delivering in your business, or focusing on the model in your business, or the timeframes that you have for your business. And the number one way to test your niche and to ensure you have viability of niche is not to make assumptions. It's actually to make offers. It's actually to go out and test with that market, to share ways that people can work with you and buy from you, and talk about that value proposition and really test your messaging. And so make offers, not assumptions, is the key thing I want to leave you with in this episode, to make sure that we're not just deciding, oh, it's not a viable niche because 6 people said they can't afford it. Or it's not a viable niche because I'm making assumptions about why they want to save money. People who have very high disposable income want to save more money too. That they're not all just willing to pay full price on everything because they can. Yeah. And so we don't want to make assumptions there. Now, the other thing I also want to talk about is that in selecting the niche, we don't just want to talk about people through the lens of demographics. So saying that your target market, for example, is single moms who, struggling to pay their bills and stay ahead of things, and they want to save money on their bills, right? That's not necessarily giving you all of the information that you need about that niche, and it's not all the decisions that you need to make about that niche. I like to select a niche based on 3 layers of information. Number 1 is demographics, but there's just bare minimums of demographics. In most niches, the age range is not important. In most niches, the income level is not important. The income source is important, but not the amount of income. In most niches, it's not important whether someone likes yoga or not, right? Even if you're teaching yoga, you don't have to focus on a niche who already love yoga. Wild, isn't it? So in most niches, those demographics are actually irrelevant. So the niche decisions that we want to make in relation to demographics need to be related to what is the niche again? It is who you are marketing to when you promote your products and services. So it's not everyone who could benefit from your products and services. It's who you want to market to. So the niche decisions that we make around demographics need to be linked to your marketing decisions. And so in most cases, that's usually a question around gender identity, because the way that we market to women is different and marginalized people is different to the way that we market to men. And often it's also something about where their income comes from, because the way that you market to entrepreneurs and business owners is very different to the way that you market to people who are in a job. Regardless of whether your product or service has anything to do with where they get their money from or how they make money or what the outcome is, it actually is critical to the marketing decision of how do I market to these people? What's the messaging behind it? How do I reach them? Those sorts of things. So that's usually the only key demographic decisions that we make. The next layer of niching is those psychographics. So what is their goal? What do they worry about? What kind of person are they? So that's the next layer. And then the final layer is, it's a term that I completely made up, which is sensographics, which is like, what do their five senses tell them? So what is their lived experience of this goal, of this problem, or of this thing that's keeping them up at night? And so by creating those three layers, what we're able to do is have a depth of understanding of that person that we want to market to, that gives us tangibility, that gives us resonance in our messaging, and also it speaks to the goal they have or the problem that they want to solve and why that is urgent for them and why they are willing to prioritize spending money, time, effort, energy in solving that problem or achieving that goal. And so if that's something that you think maybe you've missed in your niching, or your niche does not really hit that really clearly, then what I'd love to share with you is my Nail Your Niche training, which you can access at any time for free. I will pop a link to that in the show notes of today's episode at tashcorbin.com/377. And I highly recommend that you check that one out, because niching is the number one core baseline foundation of all the other pieces of growing a business. So once we're clear on who the niche is, and that driver and that goal, then the next layer is your messaging and your value proposition. And that answers the question, why? Why would they buy from you? Why is this urgent? Why are they driven to achieve this goal or solve this problem? Then if you can connect with that why, then you've got motivation. And then how they find the money, or what price point they can afford, or whatever it might be, actually becomes less relevant, because when we know the urgency and the drive, then we can connect with that, and people can make an informed decision based on how connected it is to their own unique desires and goals. And so if people want to forego going to the movies for the year in order to save money on their groceries because they actually want to save for a family holiday, that's their driver, then you're going to be far more likely for them to say yes to buying something from you, because it's connected to something that's resonant for them. And so they're willing to do the meal planning and not go to the movies and watch at home instead, and change the way that they shop, because it is connected to the thing that's most motivating for them. And so that's where a lot of people get themselves caught up in their niching. They don't quite understand why they have to be so specific. And so then what they end up doing is creating really vague messaging, and it's like kind of high level, and it's a bit lofty, and it doesn't really kind of land for people, and it's not necessarily getting the results. And then they decide, it's because it's the wrong niche, or it's the wrong product, or it's too expensive, or they're making decisions about how they're going to change their model of business, or they're going to change their pricing structure and strategy, when actually it's just that their niche is not specific enough, or it's not tangible enough. And so therefore it doesn't matter how cheap the price is, there is no price low enough for someone who's a non-buyer, for someone who is not interested in the outcome you're talking about, who doesn't get it, right? And so in order to really nail that messaging that really connects in with what people are looking for, we need to understand that niche. So it's such an important foundation. It's something I think gets overlooked a lot. A lot of people just pick their niche out of thin air. They don't validate it. They don't understand how it links to marketing decisions. And so therefore they get really caught up in demographics, which make no difference to your marketing decisions. And then they say, oh, no, niching boxed me in too much, so niching is not for me. I'm just going to operate like other people who don't have a niche, but they don't have the things that other people who don't have a niche have. So, people will often say to me, oh, I'm not going to niche because this person doesn't have a niche. And I say, well, what kinds of people do you think are drawn to this person's marketing? And they can give me a pretty accurate description. I say, well, that's their niche, right? Just because they haven't specifically and tangibly articulated that that's their niche doesn't mean they don't have one. They're creating everything through the lens of talking to that person, but they just haven't done that through like a conscious decision. It's just that they naturally try and speak to that kind of person because that's who they are. So that is actually still niched. Or if they say someone who doesn't specifically have a strong niche, or, it's kind of everyone, then I look at, okay, well, how do they build their audience? They build their audience through paid advertising. Okay, well, are you willing to spend $20,000 a month on paid advertising like they do? No. Okay, well, in order to get the income they get, they spend $20,000 a month on advertising, and they do it quite generically, and therefore it takes a little longer for it to return on investment. If you're not willing to do that, like, what's your alternative pathway to viability, i.e. profit, i.e. making money sooner rather than later? For a lot of people, their resistance to niching, or their reason why they don't niche, is often like a misunderstanding of what someone else does, or how someone else built their business, or a misunderstanding of what niching is, and this perception that niching somehow boxes them in to talk about the same thing over and over again. But that's niching on topic, not on who. And so I do recommend go to tashcorbin.com/377. If any of that has resonated for you, come and check it out. Plus, don't forget, I'll put the link there in the show notes as well for you to ask a question. So if you've got questions for me, whether it be about niching or something else in your business, please do come and ask at tashcorbin.com/377. There'll be a link there for you to click, because I love giving you a shout out. I love creating podcasts that are in response to your questions, because it can make it far more practical and tangible. So please do come and ask your questions at tashcorbin.com/377 for the link. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.